about an hour and a half south of the San Diego-Tijuana border, surrounded by dramatic mountain ranges. You'll find a beautiful town, Ensenada, a little cosmopolitan, a little industrial, and a little 20th century. It's located right on the Pacific Ocean, and for me, that's the town's main attraction. The fishing boats pull right up to the dock, and they unload their catch straight into the local seafood market. Now, I've been to seafood markets all over Mexico, but I must say, this one has amazing variety, and as you'd expect, stunning freshness. More than 90 species are commercially fished or farmed in the Ensenada area. Tuna, shrimp, spiny lobsters, abalone, sea urchin, mussels, clams, sardines, mackerel, sea whelk, and an ever-changing array of local fin fish. Though a huge proportion of this catch is exported to Asia, the local market is anything but shabby. If you're wanting to sample some of the local bounty and not just look at it, you don't really have to go very far. In fact, right next to the market is a little eatery, a puesto really, called Mariscos El Norteño. It's a perfect and convenient place to taste some traditional Ensenada cuisine.
Buenos días.
Buenos días.
Voy a querer un ceviche de pescado, un taco de pescado y también un gobernador.
Un gobernador, ok. Ahorita se los traemos, ok.
Muchas gracias.
Pretty exciting stuff. You get to walk through the market and then sit down right beside it and have super fresh ceviche. That's what I ordered, a tostada of ceviche. I also ordered, of course, the famous battered fish taco. And then I ordered something else, a gobernador, a classic thing from around here, made with smoked marlin with cheese melted in it. You'll just have to see that one.
So this is a kind of special ceviche from around here, and it's made with ground fish rather than cubed fish. I like a little bit of the roasted jalapeno salsa over the top of that. Just look at this. It's almost an embarrassment of riches when it comes to condiments that you can put on these things. We've got avocado with chile and cilantro and lime, some roasted jalapeno, couple of different kinds of the dried arbol salsa, the mayonnaise that's thinned with a little bit of cream, pickled chilies, some tostadas, radishes, limes, and over here we've got onions with cilantro and cabbage that goes on those classic fish tacos. But I first have to down the tostada of ceviche.
When you order a gobernador taco here, it's made of smoked marlin and melted cheese on a corn tortilla. Delicious with that typical roasted arbol chili salsa and a little lime. The classic crispy fish taco gets a more complex combination of creamy mayonnaise, avocado sauce, a little spicy jalapeno salsa, and of course that requisite squeeze of fresh lime.
Pick that up and enjoy it. Often imitated, rarely duplicated.
Now, the most important ingredient for making ceviches is obviously the fish, and it should be absolutely pristine quality fresh fish, what we would call sort of sashimi or sushi quality fish. Now, what I bought was a piece of sashimi quality halibut, beautiful stuff. So I'm going to cut that up into small pieces to make a type of ceviche that we call a minced ceviche. This is popular in the west coast of Mexico, certainly up into the Baja Peninsula. Cut the fish into roughly 1-inch chunks, and then spread that fish onto a small baking sheet lined with parchment paper. And then for this type of ceviche, I'm actually going to put the fish into the freezer and let it firm up so that I can mince it real finely. That'll take about 40 minutes to firm.
I've got the vegetables for you.
good. So this type of ceviche takes carrot and some tomatoes, some green chilies. I'm going to choose the serranos that we've got here. And of course limes for a little bit later. Which one do you want to do?
I'll grate the carrot.
All right. And then I will work on the chilies and the tomato. Now, I always like to get as much of the juice out as possible. And you'll notice that if you cut it crosswise and then gently squeeze, you'll get that sort of gelatinous seed section out of the middle. And then you can chop the tomato and it'll be much drier than if you were just to chop the whole thing together.
Shall I start grinding the fish?
Yes, if you want to get it out of the freezer and we'll check to see if it's okay, I'll set up the grinder here for you.
All seems frozen to me.
Now this is an electric grinder. We'll just grind the fish, the firm fish from the freezer, right into the bowl with all the vegetables. Final seasonings. The lime juice. I'm going to give it a sprinkling of salt to begin with, and then we can adjust the seasonings in a minute.
Sounds good.
I love the little addition of the carrot in this one.
It gives it such a pretty color.
It does. It's very nice. So we've got that. Now my idea here was that we would put a little bit of cilantro.
Okay.
Why don't you pick off some leaves? I'm going to open up an avocado here and just take one slice out of it. Now onto the tostada. Why don't we make two little individuals and then we can each have our own little taste here. There's a little bit of ceviche, limey and good. Little bit of cilantro on top of each one. There's a piece of avocado for yours. Okay.
Good.
That's pure freshness. I wanted to delve deeper into those iconic Baja fish tacos. Most agree that they originated here in Ensenada. I mean, it's the perfect integration of the abundant local seafood, the century-old Japanese influence on Baja, and that delicious Mexican sensibility in the kitchen. I stopped off at a place called El Chopipo, a joint that's been making the classic for decades.
Dos tacos de pescado, por favor.
The fish taco is a perfect example of influence and ingenuity. It starts off with strips of fish that are battered in a simple combination of flour, water, and flavorings, and then deep fried. Sounds a little Japanese, right? The golden, crispy fish gets rolled up in a traditional Mexican corn tortilla. And for the final touch, a slathering of creamy mayo and cabbage. The Spaniards brought both of those to Mexico. And then, of course, the obligatory sparkle of chili salsa. These fish tacos are so delicious, I wanted to master them myself.
People are always asking me how I come across the traditional recipes that I make and share with everybody. Well, sometimes I'm just lucky and somebody offers to show me how to make the dish. But most of the time, I have to go through 3 steps. The first thing that I do is to read everything that I can lay my hands on, recipes, descriptions, to find out what people have said about that dish. And then I go out and taste as many versions of it as I can. If it happens to be a street food, I get to watch people make it over and over and over. And then the last thing that I do is to, well, start the chit-chat. Do you like this version or that version? Do you put beer in your batter or do you just make it with water? I learned a long time ago that if you ask somebody for the recipe, they probably won't give it to you.
Baja fish tacos. They're like an icon of the Mexican kitchen. Just think about it. It's a soft corn tortilla, that golden, crunchy, battered fish, a few slivers of cabbage, and that special crema that they always spoon on it.
You know, I've got a perfect salsa to go with that.
What's that?
Spicy arbol chili salsa.
That sounds pretty good to me. I'm gonna get together all the stuff for the fish. You make the salsa.
Great. So on to the main ingredient, the arbol chilies. Now we've got about an ounce of arbol chilies here that we want to take the stems off of. Now that these are all stemmed, we're going to dry toast them. We want them to be very aromatic. Now these are going into the blender over here. In there as well is going to go some garlic that we've roasted in their skins for about 15 minutes here. And the final ingredient, water. About 3/4 of a cup of water, plus a little bit of salt. You want to blend this till it's about a coarse puree. Wow, that'll get you. Let's just try it for some seasoning here. Surely not for the faint of heart, but I think it'll go really good with those fish tacos.
Now, the history of the Baja fish taco is kind of interesting. Most people trace it back to an influx of Japanese immigrants that came at the beginning of the 20th century. So the Baja fish taco is sort of tempura battered. But of course, the Japanese had learned to make their tempura from the Portuguese centuries ago when they had visited Japan. And this, well, it's kind of different than all of that. In fact, it's a very, very flavorful batter. And the first thing that you do is to start with a couple of big cloves of garlic. I'm going to crush them to get their papery skins off. I'm going to chop it finely. And now I'm going to make this chopped garlic into a paste by sprinkling it with salt and then work it back and forth on the cutting board to make that garlic paste. And then I'm going to add to that a little bit of Mexican oregano, some black pepper. Now here's where it gets kind of interesting. Most of the batters that I came across in Baja always had a little bit of chicken bouillon, either the powdered kind or this chicken base. So I'm going to put that in there. A little yellow mustard, about a tablespoon of that's going to go into the mix here. A baking powder, about a teaspoon of that. And now we're down to the liquid and the flour. Now you could make it with just water, and a lot of people in Baja do make their batter with water, or you could use sparkling water like seltzer water, or you could use beer, which is what I'm going to use today because I think it adds a really flavorful element and it makes a really crispy, light coating on the outside of that. So I'm going to put about a cupful of the beer into the bowl and then whisk all of that together. And finally, some flour. It's equal parts of flour and liquid. Mahi's one of my favorite fish, and that's what I've got to work with today. So I'm going to cut this into 1/2-inch pieces here. And each one in half again. Now, when I fry fish at home, if it's nice weather, I like to do it outside. Now, I've got vegetable oil heated to a little over 360 degrees, my pieces of fish here. I'm going to dip them into the batter that I made, coating them completely, pick them up by an edge, and then just drop them into the hot oil. You know, and it wouldn't be a Baja fish taco without some fresh, very thinly sliced cabbage over the top of it. That's exquisite. couldn't have been more excited about the next stop on my must-see list in Ensenada. All my chef friends had told me that Sabina Bandera Gonzalez seafood would be the best I would have here. Now, I knew that Mariscos La Guerrerense had been operating since the 60s, but what I didn't know is that her restaurant was really just a little wheeled cart on the side of a downtown street. But I figured out right away that Sabina didn't need a big place to serve impressive fresh seafood. Just a little prep kitchen at her home and the entire ocean as her backyard. I wanted to try a little bit of everything here. Sabina began chopping up some tender-boiled octopus, and her daughter shelled out one of those great big pismo clams, the ones that they call almeja blanca. They also had some strongly flavored dark pata de mula clam. She cut up bits of sea whelk that she had simmered until tender. Raw scallop and some cooked mussels also were added to the plate. Then some onion and a dose of her homemade hot sauce, a recipe she wouldn't share with me.
¿Cuál chile es este?
Este lo hago yo, es el
Es el secreto.
Es el secreto.
She cut the tips off the little regional key limes and then put them into the juicer whole and squeezed it over the entire platter. A little avocado and this tsunami of seafood was complete.
Muchísimas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, ya sabe, a ver, provecho.
A ver, muchas gracias. Oh, that's delicious. Now, there's one thing that I can't leave without having. Well, two things. One is the famous tostada de erizo, or the sea urchin tostada. And the second thing, of course, is all of these homemade salsas here. Una tostada de erizo, por favor. Y si quiero algo un poquito picoso, ¿qué le pongo?
Picoso, me gusta mucho el exótico.
El exótico. Oh, okay, so this is a couple of different kinds of chilies made into an exotic salsa. Well, this is probably about one of the most exotic things that I think I've ever eaten. Delicioso.
Qué bueno que le gusta.
Delicioso.
Qué bueno que le gusta.
So just think about it. You're here in Ensenada. You're watching all those fishing boats come into the harbor, and all you can think about is fresh seafood. Well, you'll never get it any fresher than at La Guerrerense.
A little off the beaten path is another Ensenada favorite for fish tacos. A different kind of fish tacos.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hey, how are you? What can I do for you, buddy?
What do we have?
We have the very best tacos in Ensenada, man. I got some machaca made from tuna, yellowfin tuna. I got some chicharrón from whitefish. We sell only shellfish, fish and shellfishes.
All
okay?
right.
And the very, very famous shrimp with the chipotle sauce.
Now that's what everybody in Ensenada told me I had to have. But I think I got to have one of each one of these things. So if you could make me one of each one, I would really appreciate it.
Here's one. There you are, buddy.
Thank you. I'm heading over to the condiments, which is super cool here. First of all, I'm going to start with a little lime that I'm going to put over the chicharrones, and then some cilantro for the shrimp in the chipotle sauce. And then look at this. 6 different kinds of onions. There's the raw whites, the ones with black olives, chipotle, green chili, habanero, reds with some oregano in it, some creamy sauces back here. I'm going to take a little of this cilantro cream and put that over the top of the chicharrón de pescado there. Different kinds of chili sauces. This is a creamy chipotle, but it's a little bit brighter flavor than what you find on the shrimp taco. So I'll just gild the lily with a little of that. You know, Ensenada is just filled with places that have fish tacos, but what makes each one of the places so unique is, well, all of their condiments.
Can I chop up that shrimp?
Oh, thank you very much, ma'am. While I make the sauce. Chipotle cream sauce. it's like everybody's favorite? Well, because it's rich, smoky and spicy, a little sweet, and to tell you the truth, it's really, really easy to make. Well, easy if you start with fire-roasted canned tomatoes. I mean, yeah, sure, you could go out and get some really beautiful ripe tomatoes and then roast them and use them for a sauce like this. But with fire-roasted tomatoes in a can, all that work is really done quickly. Now I'm going to drain this can just a little bit. Don't need to pour off very much of the liquid. And then I'm going to put half of that can of tomatoes in the blender jar here. Now for the chipotles, I'm going to fish out a couple of these guys and then chop them roughly and put those in the blender along with a little bit of garlic here. All I did was to break apart a head of garlic, roast them for about 15 minutes until they're a little bit blackened on the outside. Okay, that garlic now is going to go into the blender jar, and then we're going to blend everything to a smooth puree. Now our chipotle base is going to get cooked down until it reaches the consistency of a kind of tomato paste. I'm going to film the bottom of this skillet with a little bit of olive oil and then heat it over medium-high. Now when that oil is hot enough to make a little bit of that puree sizzle sharply like that, add the puree all at once and cook it down until it's that consistency of tomato paste. Now comes that touch of luxury. I have Mexican crema, which is very similar to the French creme fraiche. And I'm going to add that to our roasted tomato and chipotle mix there. While that melts in, I'm going to sprinkle in a little Mexican oregano. This is always sold in the whole leaf version, so you always crush it between your palms. A little black pepper. And then, of course, we're going to give it a seasoning of salt. When this comes to a good simmer, it'll be ready to add the shrimp to it. Take about 3 minutes or so for the shrimp to get cooked all the way to the center. You want the pieces to have lost their last little bit of translucency right at the center. Slide this right in here. These are done in the Ensenada fish market style. These are little griddle baked tostadas, and they got that real crunchy, almost popcorn kind of flavor to them. I work with a guy here in town that he works for us.
Happy having you.
Now this sauce is the one that Lainey made, and it's made from arbol chilies, and it is straight ahead,
Yes.
red chili flavor. And
As
if
I
you
said,
like,
it's not for the mild-hearted.
it is so delicious. When you have it with this cream, there's nothing like it. Okay, so help yourselves. It's not really all that hot. And especially Ensenada, it's not very hot at all. Cheers, everybody.